SoundCloud. We have started recording and we are just about to go live on Facebook. Thank you so much for your patience as we get started at this phenomenal event, historical event. So thank you. We will be getting started shortly. If you are not presenting, we are asking you to please, please, please turn off your camera. If you are not presenting, we're going to ask you to please turn off your camera. Are we live on Facebook?
Got a little pop-up that we
Yes, it is. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And this is our BSU, which if you don't know what that stands for, Black Student Union, Black Student Association, 50-year exhibit and Firechat. My name is J Meyer. I am the Director of Diversity Intercultural Life here at North Park University, and we have a dynamic historical event for you, so thank you so much for joining us. Now, I will turn it over for a brief introduction by our North Park Alumni Relations Office.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen England, and as Cherie mentioned, I serve as the Associate Director of Alumni Relations at North Park University. I'm also an alum from the class of 2010. And if you're not aware, this week we're celebrating homecoming from home on campus. So I just want to give a special warm welcome to the alumni who are tuning in today. And also a special welcome to Cornelius DuBose from the class of 1972, who you will be hearing from in a little bit. Before our program begins, I'd like to thank the Black Student Union, the Office of Diversity and Intercultural Life, and University Archives for organizing today's event. As Cherie mentioned, it's a significant year in the history of the Black Student Union on North Park's campus, and we're thrilled to be able to include this program in the Homecoming from Home week. So without further delay, I'll pass it back to Cherie, and I hope everybody enjoys this conversation.
Thank you so much, Associate Director England. Again, my name is J Meyer, and I serve the honor and privilege of being the Senior Diversity Officer for Students at North Park University, where I also serve as the Director of the Office for Diversity Intercultural Life, along with our Assistant Director, Payne II, who you'll hear from shortly. Our office, which is the Office of Diversity Intercultural Life, has a theme this year, which we are integrating throughout every program. And I believe this program is important to just denote what our theme is. It is impact over intent. And it comes from a reflection of Marcus and myself having many conversations with our colleagues and our peers at North Park University, where the intent was there, but not quite the purpose. And so the Office of Diversity and Intercultural Life for the 2020-21 program year, Impact Over Intent, cultivates a focus on how words, behavior, images, and actions, or lack thereof, impact others. Utilizing a social justice lens in a six-fold test of the evangelical church, we are deepening our intentionality towards diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. The result is agency for all members of North Park University's community to dismantle oppression and discrimination, to intentionally live lives of significance and service. Our impact must strive to value all humanity. And I believe that the impact that Mr. DuBose, as well as Jordan and Ericka and even Red are doing with the Black Student Union, and Marcus, who served as one of our presidents, is truly an impact over the intent of what Black student unions and associations are at universities. It is more than just a gathering of our students come together to eat around a table or to talk about their experiences, but being a movement on a campus that is perpetuating a history of that. Not only we belong, but we're here to stay. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to our Director of Archives, who came to the Office of Diversity Intercultural Life to remind us that this was the 50th and 51st anniversary of BSU, and he did not want that to go without notice. So he's done a wonderful presentation, which is also has been displayed since February 2020 in our library here in North Park. If you have the opportunity to come back home to Chicago, we invite you to see that exhibit, which is showcased at the bottom level of our library. But without further ado, I give it to our Director of Archives.
Thank you. Thank you for that warm introduction. Like Director Meyer said, my name is Andy Meyer, and I am the Director of the F.M. Johnson Archives and Special Collections here at North Park. In this role, I'm responsible for collecting, preserving, and providing access to records of historical significance related to North Park University. And it's my honor to be a part of this event here today that marks 50 years of the Black Student Association here at North Park, and to present some records related to the formation of this group. I also want to acknowledge that I'm in a bit of an awkward situation. I've been tasked to talk about the history and the founding of the Black Student Association when a founding member of that group is here with us. Suffice it to say, my part of the event will be short so we can all enjoy the main event, the conversation between Mr. DuBose and the current leadership of the Black Student Union. So hopefully technology will work for us today and I can share my screen and start presenting some records. I hope everyone can see that. I'll move forward as if people can. So this presentation provides a sample of the records that were displayed in the collaboratory this past spring and are still on display in the Brandel Library. When creating this exhibit, I worked with the student leadership of the Black Student Union to curate and present records related to the pioneer work of Black students in the late 1960s and early 1970s to form the Black Student Union. Some of the text on these images will likely be hard to read in this format. So in a few instances, I'll read portions of the text aloud to help everyone gain a better sense of what they say and how they might inform our understanding of the Black Student Association. And following best practices when citing archival resources, I'll use the words and terms used at the time. Let me make sure I can click through here. So the first record I'm presenting today is a letter from North Park University, or North Park College president at the time, Carl Olson, to student Stephen Woods. This letter summarizes the concerns of the Black Student Association in the fall of 1969. And this is the earliest reference that I've seen to the Black Student Association at North Park. The points of discussion that were summarized in this letter include better evaluation of the performance of Black students in and out of the classroom, promotion of Black studies on campus in areas such as music, art, and literature, and the provision of more Black music in our audiovisual library, the admission of more non-athletic Black males, the provision of a Black counselor to assist with programming and student guidance, the allocation of funds and provision of educational programs. And these are just some of the concerns summarized by President Olson in this letter. So the next artifact I'll present is a page from the 1970 cupola, which is the North Park yearbook. And this is the first time the Black Student Association is listed in a North Park yearbook. This page from the 1972 North Park College catalog is the first time the Black Student Association is listed in that publication. It describes the Black Student Association simply as providing, quote, liaisons between the college community and the Black students. The next revision of the North Park College catalog, published in 1978, also lists the Black Student Association, but with a slightly different description. This edition describes the Black Student Association as formed as a response to the systematic exclusion of Black people from the mainstream of American life, and describes the mission of the Black Student Association to, quote, render aid to new students in acclimation to college life, provide a liaison between students, faculty, and the Black ghetto, and to give Black students a voice in the decisions that affect them. These changes between the different college catalogs, I think, invite conversation and questions about how the mission and role of the Black Student Association changed and evolved throughout the 1970s. The Black Student Association was also mentioned in several articles in the student newspaper, which was the North Park College News, throughout the 1970s. In this article from February of 1975, the leader of the Black Student Association is interviewed by the editor of the paper, and another article describes the roots, roles, and purpose of the Black Student Association. I won't read it to you all here, but this along with the North Park catalogs and North Park yearbooks are all available through the archive's digital collections if you're curious in reading this or want to learn more. And for many years, the Black Student Association sponsored campus events, including lectures, film screenings, poetry readings, and dinners under the title Black Expression Week. This memo describes the events of Black Expression Week from February of 1977. And as a conclusion to my portion of this event, and as a transition to the discussion to follow, the last record I'll show is another page from the North Park yearbook. This image from 1972 shows the Black Student Association and lists Cornelius DuBose, the alumnus joining us today as a member. If you are an alumni and wish to share a story or historical record, please reach out to us via the diversity@northpark.edu email address. There is another event scheduled for February of 2021, and we welcome participation there. In conclusion, I want to thank the Office of Diversity and Intercultural Life and the Office of Alumni Relations for the unique and wonderful opportunity to hear directly from a founding member of the Black Student Association and to hear a conversation between him and the current Black Student Union leadership. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Marcus Payne, Interim Assistant Director of Diversity and Intercultural Life here at North Park, who will introduce the speakers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Andy, for your presentation, and thank you for taking initiative last winter and kind of meeting with Cherie, and I definitely appreciate that. As Director Meyer said earlier, my name is Marcus Payne. I'm currently Interim Assistant Director of Diversity here at North Park University. I also was a student, and I graduated in 2018, so I'm also an alum of North Park, and I served as the president of BSU for about a semester and a half during my tenure as a student there. And so I want to thank everybody for coming through. Being Black and being a Black male student is very important to me. It was very important to me at North Park. And so I'm glad and greatly honored that we have Mr. DuBose here with us today. Before we get into our discussion, I would like to have the members who are going to be speaking introduce themselves. And I first want to start with Ericka, who is one of our board members with BSU, and then pass over to Jordan to introduce himself. And then after that, we'll have Mr. DuBose.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Ericka Russell. I am a sophomore here at North Park University. I am from the south side of Chicago, and I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to hear other people speak. Thank you. Jordan?
Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm a senior at North Park University, expecting to graduate in December. I am a business major in marketing and also a Voyage member in a student activities board. And yeah, that's the basis of it. And Black Student Union president.
Jordan, can you tell us how long you've served as the BSU president? It's been
I've served fully for since 2017, the spring of 2017 through 2020, fall of 2020. And that would be about 6 terms, I believe.
Thank you, Jordan. And Mr. DuBose, could you please introduce yourself, our honored guest?
Hi, my name is Cornelius DuBose. I attended North Park from 1968 to 1972. I was a history major. After that, I became an educator, which I did for 43 years, and now I'm retired, and here we are today.
And we are so grateful that you are here today. And thank you again to our attendees who are watching either via Zoom and also through Facebook Live. We're about to engage in kind of a question and answer conversation with Mr. DuBose, where I will ask him a series of questions. And I also ask Jordan and Ericka to have a few questions prepared as well, as I will turn it over to them at one point in time. But Mr. DuBose, if you are ready, the first question I have for you on this wonderful afternoon is, really, what was it like to be a Black student on North Park's campus 50 years ago? I think that is the question I want to know the most about, so I'm looking forward to hearing your answer.
Well, 50 years ago was a long time. Let's start with that. So, you know, I think when I think about that question, I think about who were the Black students in North Park at that time. And most of us came from the South Side. There were a few from the West Side. There were multiple students from high school. So like I went to Lindblom. There were 3 Lindblom students. There were students from Parker. There were students from various South Side and West Side schools. Most of us lived in the dorm. So we had the campus experience. Most of us, as you can tell from Steve's letter, were athletes. Our freshman year would have been the first year where they had a large influx of Black students. There may have been 15 of us. The year before that, I think there were 4, and I think you've met Greg Crawford, who was one of those. And the year after that, there were about 3 or 4 more that came in. At one point, there was like 25 of us. When they brought us in, especially my freshman year, there were very few Black women on campus because they brought in athletes, they brought in a bunch of guys, and they didn't bring in a lot of Black women. Some North Park faculty wanted us there and were very supportive and did what they could do to help. There was no, I think where I really wanted to start, the first thing I thought I would say was there was no no intercultural life. It didn't exist. Yeah. You know, we were there, and I think that what was expected of us from those that were in power was to blend into the campus, become a part of the campus, have a colorblind society, and that didn't work for anybody. It didn't work for the Black students. It didn't work for a lot of the white students. It did work for the administration as long as we didn't make waves, because we were there that freshman year. It was the only time North Park ever had a winning football team. So, so there was some benefit to the school. It was 1968. The United States was at war with Vietnam. Every black and white male that was there was eligible to be drafted. So it was a different time. The Black Panthers, Martin Luther King had been killed April 4th of my senior year. So now it's fall of 1968. The Black Panthers are very, very prominent. Hippies are on campus. And basically as it is now, it was a politically charged environment, a more politically charged environment than probably in the 80s and the 90s and some other times. North Park had been, in my opinion, up until that point, an insulated environment, an insulated covenant environment. So the Covenant Church was there. North Park is a Covenant school. The school was there, but they hadn't had to deal with in school, on campus, a lot of non-Covenant people. So, for instance, and just to give you, what was it like? There were no dances on campus because dancing was illegal. You couldn't do it. It was against the rules of the school. We had to go to chapel twice a week, and they took attendance in chapel, and you could be expelled from school for not going to chapel. For many of the white students, and this was the first time they had ever had the opportunity to meet anybody that wasn't white, and for most of us Black students, this was, certainly for me, from my own personal perspective, this was the very first time that I'd had the opportunity to live with people that were not Black. I mean,
Right.
you know, there weren't any white people in my neighborhood that weren't cops. So, you know, so we're there. We get there. They assign us rooms. They assign us roommates, and the Black students decided, you know, like I decided, I like you. You're a nice guy, but I want to be a roommate with the guy I went to high school with because he's my best friend and I know him and we play football together and I want to, so we get there and then we start making decisions for ourselves, and some of those decisions are looked at as we don't want to participate in the community. We don't want to participate in the school. We don't want to get to know you when in fact, I think what it was for us was we just want to feel comfortable and find our way and our footing and maintain ourselves in this environment and just not get overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I imagine being at North Park in 1968 was a little bit like being at North Park in 2020, except that we didn't have history the school nor we had history to look at to make decisions from. We were making those decisions in the moment.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mr. DuBose. And there's interestingly enough, there's still a lot of correlations about what you said that are going on right now. I know as a student, when I came to North Park in 2014, I was very perplexed at the fact that there wasn't many Black men on campus who weren't athletes. And I was the only Black male, one of the few Black males on campus who was not an athlete. I was also the only Black male in both of my programs. And so kind of not having an affinity group or people to kind of affiliate with was tough. And to also piggyback on that, I know a lot of students who I've spoken to, who I've known over the years, have not had to live with white people before. And it's a different experience. And the hard part is, if they do see white people in their neighborhoods, unfortunately, they're consistently cops and not those who want to build a relationship that is based on the fact that we're all humans and not the fact that you want to arrest me or profile me for these negative reasons. And so this next question it may be obvious, but I'm still interested in your response. Are there any distinct experiences or stories that kind of may have led you and your fellow students to begin to think about creating this Black student group on campus?
I don't think that there were some things that happened after we created the Black Students Association, but what led up to it was, again, I'll go back to, it was 1968.
Right.
And in 1968, there were Black student associations being formed all across America on campuses because for the first time, Black students were going to white schools. So they had gone to historically Black, we've gone to historically Black schools. You know, athletes got to go to Ohio State and Michigan, and I mean, because that's just the way that is.
Yeah.
But now we were there. We saw other organizations on campus. They had programs. They did things for their own group. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we didn't have a group we didn't have an organization that just belonged to us. We didn't have a place on campus that we could go.
Yeah.
So if you look at Steve's letter, you know, some of the things he asked for or that were asked for in that letter were a place that we could have as our own, a voice to the administration. And so we finally just, you know, got together one day in the cranny, probably. I don't know if the cranny still exists.
I don't know what that is, so I don't think it is.
The cranny was in the student union. It was like the lounge. It was where you could get food and stuff. So, I mean, it's where everybody went and sat and ate. So I think we just, you know, we sat around and we talked about it and we said, you know what, we need to form we just need to form our own organization so that we can do the things that we feel that we need to do for us, because we didn't think that the school, not that they didn't have our best interest at heart, but they just didn't know what to do. We were new to them. And like I said, I and others felt that, you know, not only were we new to them, but there was a dichotomy of thought as about whether we should or should not be there. Some people wanted us there. Some people did not want you there. And those that did were very helpful, and those that didn't were very obstructionist when they got the opportunity to be so. So there was no, I think, single precipitating event. It was just that we were there. It was the time.
Yeah.
And we formed the organization.
Nah, and that's interesting because in your first response, you mentioned how there is no dancing, but dancing is such an integral part of Black culture. Music is so important to our culture, to our history, especially in church settings. I know one of the things that was interesting for me, having to go participating in chapel, I didn't know what the covenant was, and I grew up Black Pentecostal. And so we don't know how to sit down when we go to service, and not even seeing that expression of worship was different from me. And kind of sometimes worshiping in a more expressive way, I would kind of get looked down upon, just for expressing and being my culture. And so kind of the next question I have for you is, what were some of the things that happened after you all formed this group? What were some of the pushback that you may have received from the campus, from students? And maybe even give us a story or two about anything that may have happened as well.
Let me go back to chapel for a moment.
Of course.
Go ahead. Chapel was I mean, chapel was twice a week. It was 8 o'clock. I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning. It was early, and they took attendance. I mean, they didn't even take attendance in classes I attended. You know, if you didn't go to class, you didn't go to class, and it would reflect in your grade. But they took attendance in chapel, and you could be expelled from school if you didn't go. So we all went, and one day I was at chapel, and it was. And most of the time, chapel was okay. I mean, it was a religious experience, and that's cool. But this one day, the minister said, he was a covenant minister, and he said, "If you're not covenant, you're going to hell." So it wasn't good enough to not be Christian. You had to be. So I thought about that after he said that, and so I decided that I would no longer go to chapel. Naturally. And this was my own personal decision. It wasn't an organizational decision. And so the Dean Peterson, who was the Dean of Students, who I got to see a lot of in my 4 years at North Park, he called me into his office, and he said, "You're not going." After a few weeks when, my attendance wasn't there, he said, "You're not going to chapel, and you can be expelled for that." And he goes, "Why aren't you going?" I said, "Because he said if I wasn't covenant, I was going to hell. I'm not going to become covenant. I'm going to hell. Then that's a waste of my time." Yeah. So he asked me to leave his office. But the next year we didn't have to go to chapel anymore. Chapel was no longer a requirement. And I think that's important because I think it was North Park coming to the realization that we have people here that aren't covenant. And we have to deal with that reality. And I think that was the very first time. The whole dancing thing, there were riots. I mean, there were protests all over America about Vietnam and this. The first protest I ever saw at North Park was my freshman year. It was about dancing. So we were able to dance after that. The school could have a dance after that. So pushback from the Black Student Association, there was some pushback with students in that some students just felt hurt by it. Some white students felt hurt by it, that we didn't want to be they took it as we did not want to be a part of the North Park community. That we wanted to be something separate and distinct from the North Park community, which wasn't the case at all. We just wanted our own piece of the North Park community. Yeah. So there was some student pushback. There was student discussions. And I will say one of the things that I loved about North Park the entire time that I was there was the ability to have intellectual discussions about some very, very, very tough subjects, be it religion, be it race, whatever, and to sit and have those discussions in a meaningful, nothing but nothing may have changed because of them. But the very fact that you can sit down with a person that is different than you and have a discussion, and not a yelling match,
Right.
not a, you know, but just a discussion, I thought that was important.
Yeah.
I will say, so in Black History Week, it's probably 1969, 70, we decided, the Black Student Association decided to have a display in whatever the science building is called. I forget what it's called. So we were to do it in the lobby, and it was all about Martin Luther King. And the head of the science department at the time had made his feelings about Black students being on campus known to others in his department, who had let it be known to us how he felt, and he wasn't happy that we were there.
Yeah.
So we were doing this display, and it had a tape recording of Martin Luther King. He comes out and he turns it off, and so we turned it back on. And so that went on all day. Whenever he didn't have a class, he'd come out and he'd do his thing. So we went through that. So then I wrote an article for the newspaper saying that, you know, what had happened, and that Martin Luther King was a great man, and he was a non-violent man, but we aren't Martin Luther Kings, and you can't treat us this way.
Yeah.
Which got me a call to the head football coach's office, because when you're an athlete, the first person they send to talk to you
Is a coach.
Is the coach.
Yep.
So the coach wanted to know that had I threatened to burn the school down. I go, no, I hadn't threatened to do that. But we were unhappy about what had gone on.
Right.
The second big thing, I think incident that I like to call it incident was the phone incident. So in Steve's letter, you can see it asked for a place for the Black students to meet, and that place was the school actually built in the student union a room for us, or where that was ours, that we could go and we could meet and we could do whatever we wanted to do in there, but it didn't have a phone. So we decided we wanted a phone. This was before cell phones, obviously. Nobody had a cell phone, we had to depend on their phone. So the school said, no, you can't have a phone. And at that point, we decided we would, as was the custom of the time, take over the president's office. And so we did. We took over the president's office. Fortunately for him, he wasn't there, and he didn't come. His secretary must have called him, because he didn't come back the entire time we were there. So we sat there for 2 or 3 hours, and then we left. And then we got a call. I got a call to go meet with the business manager, one of the business managers of the school, and we discussed the phone, and we discussed who would pay for it, and we got the phone. But it was that. And I think the one incident that I think is student related is what I call the budget incident. So we had formed, we had to submit a budget to the student to the student government, and we submitted a budget. We submitted a budget for like $10,000, which I think was the entire student government's budget at that point. But we submitted that budget, and so it came time for the meeting, to the public meeting, and where our budget request would be voted on. And I have never seen students at North Park act so mean. They said, why do you want this money? What do you do? Go have a bake sale, go do that. It was the only time that I actually saw the students as a group get rancored and act in a negative way. But so those are some of the examples of pushback. I mean, the other more subtle stuff is there were professors that we generally would say, if you don't have to take this guy, don't take him, because he will make your life difficult.
Yeah.
So
thank you for those. And that, I can't imagine how tough it was to be in those type of white environments during the 60s. Because what I like to remind people is Jim Crow and the Civil Rights era wasn't too far away from that. Right. Like, your parents and your grandparents suffered through those atrocities for many years. And so being kind of integrated into these new settings was new. was new for you all. And so just thank you for being a pioneer for a student such as myself and all the other alum who are on this call. Because of the experiences you all went through, we were able to voice our opinions a little bit more easier. There's still pushback, but a little bit more easier, thanks to the trailblazing you all did. I want to give Jordan an opportunity to ask a question of Mr. DuBose. So Jordan, go ahead.
First of all, I wanted to comment into I did read the letter and the list of demands and how some of these demands were met. Is very empowering and probably difficult to do, because back in the day it's hard to put your education on the line with equality, because at that time both did not come hand in hand without handcuffs. And to finish with the education and to still move forward, to have basically the shoulders that I could lead off from, because at the time during BSU I didn't know how important it was to lead a legacy. And one of the things that we have for our questions that talk about coping mechanisms in a diversity setting is, first of all, the definition of coping mechanism is it's like a strategy to deal with trauma, and how to overcome that with different solutions. And that hits across the boards for different races, different cultures, males, females, and people with their own situations and what they go through. So maybe my question for you ultimately is, how did you I guess try to comfort parts of your community that needed that I guess that love and affection in a way? I wouldn't say love and affection, like a brother.
When you say community, I'm assuming that you're talking about those of us that were at North Park, not the community from which we are.
The black community in the North Park school setting at that time.
So, I don't know if you do have to cope with it, but I think the first thing you have to do, I think, or the first thing that I think we did, or that I did, I'll speak for myself, is you have to keep your eye on what the ultimate goal is. My ultimate goal was to get a degree, because without a degree, I was going to go back to the South Side, and Lord knows what was going to happen. So all those other things are impediments to you getting to your goal, and so you have to somehow manage them. If you can find, fortunately for you and the people that are at North Park during this time frame, there are I don't know how many Black instructors there are on the North Park campus now. When I was here, there was one, and he was from Haiti. So you can go to those people and you can talk to them. We could go to other people that were supportive of us being there, and we could talk to them. But basically, we just had each other to bounce things off of, to meet with, to do what we knew was familiar to each other, to play bid whist, to do the things that we could do to support each other, to keep each other uplifted, to help. There were typewriters back then, and help type papers for people. So it was just a team effort, but not a planned team effort. It was just, I'll help you, you help me. When I'm down, you help me. When you're down, I'll help you. And that's pretty much it, because the school didn't offer very much support. Because I don't, and I don't say that to say that the school was being mean, that the school was doing anything against. The school didn't know what to do with 15, 20, 25 Black people on their campus at that time. They just didn't. They didn't know what to expect. I think it was a cultural experiment for them that I think worked out well, actually.
Thank you for
I
that.
hope that answered your question.
That did. It did.
Thank you for that question as well. I want to ask Ericka if she can put her video on and also get a question prepared to ask Mr. DuBose as well. Ericka, go ahead with your question.
Hi.
Hello.
So recently I found out that there isn't a racial bias policy here at North Park. I had an incident with a student who said something very inappropriate to me, but there was nothing they can do because it's not a policy. So I wanted to ask, how would you draft one or try to implement one at North Park?
How would you? Well, there are many bias policies out there, so you can always find a bias policy. The issue, I think, is with any administrative change in any sort of organization, is to get those in charge, those that have power, to implement that policy and to make that policy real, because they can adapt it, they can adopt the policy, but if they don't implement, if they don't actually see the policy through and do something, if something happens, then the policy is just meaningless. You know, it's like having a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit sign and I'm driving 50 every day. And nobody ever stops me. So I think you write the policy, you need to find someone in the administration, and I'm sure that Marcus and I'm sorry, Cherie can help find the appropriate institutional liaisons to make that policy real. The issue is, do the people that have the power, are the people that have the power, or do they want to do that? Because it's going to be a hassle. It's going to be a hassle for them. And so if they need to implement, you need to sit down, write the policy, have the policy implemented, and then have the policy enforced by the school. And you need people in power to do that, because if you don't have people in power, it's just not going to get done.
And so I just wanted to add to that, and this is one of the great honors of being the Senior Diversity Officer here at North Park. And so, Ericka, you need to talk to me, girl. You got my text, cell phone number. But in all seriousness, at North Park University, we do have the policy against discrimination, harassment, sexual violence, relationship violence, and retaliation, which is listed on our Title IX website. I will be putting it in the chat, both in Zoom and in Facebook. What I can say is that I am proud to be working with the Dean of Students, the Title IX coordinator, and the director of HR. We've been working on renewing this policy, as it has definitely caused a lot of issues between separating Title IX and different matters of bias and sensitivities. And so I am someone that students can report to. Marcus is as well as our Title IX coordinators website have a list of Title IX advocates, where if something like this happens on campus, you can report it. As well as our students should know that EARS, which is our early alert reporting system, does have a reporting item in it for insensitivity, bias, discrimination, harassment, and that is anonymously going to be investigated, while the student who puts in our report initially is not anonymous, because you have to put your name. However, the Office of Student Care will investigate that information and get it to our Title IX officer, our Dean of Students, or our HR director. So there is an update to that particular policy, which I have personally been a part of. And again, this is where students give me this kind of feedback, as well as my experience as a Title IX officer and someone in student conduct, to be able to make revisions so that our students do feel safe. But I'm so sorry, Ericka, whatever insensitivity, bias you've experienced in any student, as we've seen so much lately. I am someone that unfortunately tells folks, me and Marcus, for a time, I want to say probably last week was the first week, we saw a bias incident every single week at this institution. That is not abnormal for an institution like ourselves. However, it does not mean that it does not get reported. Reporting these incidents is where we can stop things from happening and educate our campus and be a better campus. But please report these things. So Ericka, you got my cell phone number. So don't be a stranger. And to any student, please email Marcus or myself. The Dean of Students has office hours. She just put those out literally today on her Instagram page and through email. Please contact us by sliding our DMs on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Please let us know. Our office is in the Collaboratory in Solberg Hall. You can sit down, talk to us, and then we can help you on filing a grievance. And this does not matter if it's against another student, against an employee, and even against the visitor or guest that comes to North Park. We want to make sure that you understand that there is a way to report these kind of incidents, and that we will work to investigate them and come to a resolution, because we want to make sure everyone is safe. So again, the policy is the policy against discrimination, harassment, sexual violence, relationship violence, and retaliation, as well as on our student handbook. We do have further policies on these different matters. So I will give the floor back to Marcus.
Thank you, Ericka, for your question, and thank you, Director Myers, for that clarification. Mr. DuBose, before we get into our Q&A from our guests, I have a couple more questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
I guess the first one is, in the letter that Steve wrote, Carl Olson summarized the Black Student Association's goal as educating the campus. Was that you all's hope to educate the campus, or what was you all's goal on?
No, I really don't think that. I think we felt that, one, just being there was an education for the campus. That graduating was an education for the campus and a way to ensure that there would be future Black students. Because as I said, I think we were an experiment. Could we? North Park has a rigorous educational program. You get a good education there, and it's some of it was, and like you, I was the only Black history major. There were no, I don't know if there's been one since, but there had been none. There had been none previous, and there was just me. So a lot of us were in programs where we were there. So we felt that there were people there that just didn't think we could do it, that didn't think we were intellectually proficient enough to get a North Park education. So the fact that we could, and we could maintain our, those classes, and we could graduate from that school, we thought that was important. But, I think really our what we were trying to achieve was we wanted an organization that we could have. We wanted something on campus that was ours. And there was, we could have joined some other organization. And earlier today, I looked at the North Park. There's a big list of all the organizations and what all the rules are and how you create an organization and how you manage an organization. Yeah. We didn't have any of that. that didn't exist. That document didn't exist. That help didn't exist. We were just doing what we were flying by the seat of our pants. Yeah. And one of the things we wanted, though, was we wanted to be able to talk to the administration with a singular voice. Yeah. So that instead of having me go and complain about this, like me going and complain about my chapel thing, or Joe Bell going to complain about something else, we could get together and decide these are the things that we need them to do for us, that we want them to do for us. And so let's go and let's appoint somebody and go talk to them, or Steve go write the letter, or something like that. And then I think another thing we wanted was, we wanted to be able to bring in speakers that spoke to us. And there are a lot of speakers, and you know what, I noticed when I believe it's who's the president of the BSU now?
Jordan.
I believe Jordan talked about events that they had, and the archivist showed, like in the 70s there were events. Anything that we ever did was just for us. It was like we would bring in a speaker that the school wouldn't bring in. We had a library of books like Institutional Racism and Black Power and you know, other books that the school we couldn't find at school. So we would use those.
Your own resources.
Our own resources and things that were meaningful to us that weren't meaningful to other people at the school. Right. You know, I mean, I don't know if you've ever read the book Institutional Racism. It was written in 1969, but it could have been written yesterday. And for us to live through that, and to find our way through that, we needed to educate ourselves about some things that school just didn't have the will or the knowledge to do.
Yeah, and that's that education piece. It always cracks me up when higher institution systems hide information from people, because I think, and as a student at North Park, I felt this way, that North Park at times felt that they were separate from being complicit in institutional racism. And I believe any white institution is affected by white supremacy, especially when there's not a majority POC, especially Black presence making decisions and then giving power. And so I'm glad that you all found that those resources to educate yourself, because that's the real thing. Institutional racism doesn't just affect our education, it affects housing, it affects food insecurities. And someone who lives in Chicago, who grew up in Chicago, grew up on the South Side, I'm sure you know a lot about that. And I would love to even ask you, maybe one day we could connect just one-on-one about what was it like to live in Chicago in the 60s, you know what I'm saying, on the South Side. Because I believe you could probably write a book about that, but that's not what we're here for today. Kind of my final question I have for you though, sir, before we move into the kind of public Q&A is, what is some advice you would give current Black students on campus right now? And what is some advice you would give the Black Student Union as well? And just some important tidbits, because you've been dropping knowledge and I just want to continue to just glean from that.
The Black Student Union, the fact that it exists, when I got the email, I was 50 years, man, I'm getting old. But the fact that it still exists is a benefit, and the Black from our talk earlier, the Black Student Union is now moving on to the campus to try and educate the campus, to try and do those things that Steve mentioned in that letter. So I just think they just have to not get frustrated, because it's so easy to get frustrated. Right. It's so easy to get discouraged. It is also easy to get angry. And one of the other things I would say is there were white people at North Park that I met that, you know, I think I would choose never to see again in my life. But there are a lot more that I did enjoy talking to and being with and being in class with. I can't say that any of us are still close friends. I think the friends that I left North Park with, that I am still friends with, close friends with, they were all Black. But that might have something to say something more about me than it does them. I don't know. Yeah. But I think ultimately the thing I say about North Park is the foundation of all the good things that has happened to me in my adult life. And that's a fact. I got a college degree from there. I got a good education from there. I got to be told for the first time in my entire life that I was an intelligent human being there. And now, I said there was one Black professor, and and he was my Latin professor, and I was late turning something in. I had to go to his house, and he took my assignment. He says, "Mr. DuBose, you are very intelligent, but you are very lazy." And he was right about the second one anyway. And but that conversation with that man that day changed how I approached North Park, changed how I approached school. So, and ultimately, the thing that North Park will give you, other places will give you, but you need to get a degree. You need to get your degree. If it's a North Park degree, great, because there are things that you will learn at North Park that you probably can't learn other places. There are things you'll learn other places you won't get at North Park. But the degree is the ultimate goal, and you have to push through to get to that degree, no matter who is trying to stop you or in what manner they're trying to stop you from doing it. Ultimately, the thing I would tell any Black student at North Park or any other school is get your degree. Your degree will make a difference in your life.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I appreciate your story about the faculty member, because shout out to Dr. Mary Trujillo, who retired. She was one of the Black professors I had at North Park, and Dr. Trujillo told me something similar that your professor said. She pulled me in her office. Dr. Trujillo is a short woman, about 5'2". I'm not too tall, but definitely she pulled me down. She sat me down, looked me dead in my eye. I had turned in an assignment. She looked me straight up and she said, "Marcus, do you believe God gave you talents?" And I was like, "Yes, Dr. Trujillo, I do believe that." And so she was like, "Why are you then wasting them right now?" And I stood there speechless. And her next response was, "Do you know when you're not living up to your potential, it's you having the audacity to spit in God's face?" And she straight up asked me, "Mark, did you have the audacity to spit in God's face?" And in that moment right there, I started crying in this woman's room because I'm just like, no, I don't want to spit in God's face. But that interaction with a Black faculty member was so important to me, and it kind of is what propelled me to become more of a leader on campus, to take my education seriously, to see that I did have intelligence, to see that I was valued, to see that what I do have to say and bring out to campus does make sense. And so shout out to Dr. Trujillo, because if it wasn't for Dr. Trujillo, I definitely probably would be spitting in God's face and having that terrible audacity. So I thank you for those. I'm going to open it up for the Q&A. Again, I ask people, if you have questions, please submit them to the chat. And we do have one question that came up. And the question was, as I pull up, how has diversity of faculty grown / shifted over time? And then the next question is, how do faculty and staff support BSA / BSU now? I can answer that question. There are more diverse professors on campus, but it still is not equitable. I believe it does not match the student body. And we do need more professors that look like our students. But that has grown significantly over the years. There's more than one faculty member at North Park University, which is different than what was going on in Mr. DuBose's time. For example, to kind of answer that question too, the second question, the BSA and the BSU their faculty advisors are Black. And so there's a lot of support from faculty support for the Black Student Union right now. I can name a couple of professors, Dr. Hodge and Dr. Lisa Alexander, and even staff members, Pastor Terrence Gatson, who is the co-pastor for UMen, as well as athletic chaplain. There is that support there. Of course, there's Cherie and myself, but that's our jobs. But there is external support as well. Is there any other questions? I'm gonna give another moment for people to maybe ask a couple of other questions. We only had that one. Jordan, did you have another question that you may have wanted to ask Mr. DuBose?
How did you develop as a leader?
How did I develop as a leader?
Or what kind of pushed you to I guess learn more about leadership? Because I was not the way I became the BSU president was not by vote, or it was a unanimous, hey, you're here and you're able to fill this spot. Can you be here?
Yeah, you know, I don't even know how, you know, I wound up doing a lot of things at North. I wound up going to talk to the faculty, not the, but the administration a lot. And I, to this day, I was thinking about that this week. I have no idea how that happened to me. I think one, well, you're willing to. You're willing to do it, and you accept the responsibility of doing it. I think two, people see things in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself, and when those people, so they ask you to do things that you just wouldn't ordinarily do, because I think I left North Park with leadership skills, but I don't know how I developed them. I don't know where I developed them. I don't know why other people recognize them. It just, like you, it just happened to me. Later in life, I learned to be a leader from a wonderful woman that was my principal, that was just an awesome leader herself. But I don't know.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. DuBose. The
Thank
next
you.
question we have, actually, I'm going to ask of Jordan. The question in the chat is, how can Black alumni better support current Black students? I'm going to allow Director Myricks to answer that first, and then I'll give Jordan an opportunity to respond to that question as well.
Thank you so much for the alum that gave that question. In my personal opinion, it's kind of going to come out of Jordan's mouth. Marcus Payne has monthly meetings with all our diversity office clubs, presidents and vice presidents. And at our last meeting, our new assistant director for career services came in. And one thing that Jordan really expressed was opportunities, which is their platform this year. And to be quite honest, I would like to see more Black alum come back and give and sow into our current Black students. Not only on how you got into your career, but how did you make that decision? Is there any internship opportunities? Where do you think they should be going as far as the new city? Just speaking to them about how difficult it is to be a Black student at an institution that is a Hispanic serving institution, but still feels like a prominently white institution. They need to see you, they need to hear you. And so being active in their lives would make all the difference. Jordan is very, very open as a president and his administration of inviting anyone in our community to come to events, to come to community meetings, and he would love that. But really just going back to that student and hearing them to say right now, as Jordan is about to graduate, so he's taking that charge from our speaker of what can you provide him, that feedback, that opportunity, that mentoring, because we're still here on the north side of Chicago. We're still somewhat a community that maybe doesn't have access to a lot of the Black community that is on the south side and is on the west side. And so you're able to give insight and opportunity that will impact our students today. And so I implore you to look at opportunities to get involved and to be here on our campus when you can. And if you can't physically be on this campus, to find other ways like remote opportunities. We have an event tomorrow during our tailgate just for fun, but we have so many events coming up like our Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. That's every single January. We have our George Floyd event that's coming up on October 14th. Those opportunities, but Jordan has events in the BSU. ACC, which is our African Cultural Club, which is actually birthed out of the Black Student Union and then departed so that we can honor those of African heritage and nationality. They're also looking for support. And so our students need that. They see us a lot and they know that we're here, but I'm not quite sure if they get that from the alumni, and then they can only see what they can only be what they see. So if you want them to come back to the institution like Marcus and give back to the next 50th year, then we have to make sure that they are seeing that. I take on that responsibility at IUPUI, Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, of being an active alum. And so I challenge us to come back home and to really give seeds into our students here, because they need to see you. They need to see that you made it, and they need to see that you're willing to invest with them and pay it forward. Jordan, I give the floor to you.
Actually, I've before I give my response, there was actually a classmate who wanted me to ask you this question. She was unable to get on to the Zoom, but she's heard about you and your works, and she wanted to ask, were there times when the BSU had an event that white class members joined in that humble you, and what would you say to those who critique your white counter members who did not or did join and support Black students on campus? Basically, to in that perspective, how did you were able to choose who were in your corner as a white ally or non-white ally, anybody who was not Black?
It was easy from a faculty perspective. I think. There were certain faculty members that just made it known that, I was one of the people who helped to get you here, and I will, and there was no systemic, like you have systemic help. You have the the Department of Diversity and Intercultural Life. We didn't have any systemic help. It just didn't exist. So, in terms of her initial question about white people coming to Black events, we didn't really offer any events for white people to come to. The events that we basically had in our room, or in our meeting room, and they were basically for us. So that we hadn't progressed to that point yet on campus. So I think from what I saw from the archives, that took place in the 70s, later in the 70s, and not early in the 70s. But you have to talk to people. You have to make an evaluation about what's in their heart, and you have to understand that there will be people for you and there will be people against you. And because there are people against you, doesn't mean that everyone's against you. And sometimes that's real hard, because you just go like, it's just a sea of nasty coming at me, and I'm just going to fight back at it. And it's not necessarily true, but it's hard to see past what confronts you every day. And so, I think that ultimately you have to talk to people, those that you can talk to. And if you can talk to them, there's hope. If you can't talk to them, and if they just have a solid, firm, I don't like you, I hate you, I think you are whatever I think you are, then that you need to sit that person by the wayside, unless they are somehow if they are somehow impeding what you're trying to do. If it's an instructor that's going to give you a bad grade and you did better work than that, then you have to do something, because that really stops you from your goal. Because your goal is to graduate, your goal is to get that degree. If you have to be alone to get it, you have to be alone to get it, but you got to get it. So there will be help on campus. There'll be those that like you. There'll be those that don't, and you just have to discern that for yourself. There is no magic bullet for that.
Thank you.
I know of.
Thank you for that wisdom, Mr. DuBose. And before we wrap up, Jordan, I want to give you a moment to respond to the alumni question. In what ways can Black alumni support BSU?
I'll make it quick. One thing that we can work on as an institution, and this goes both ways, outreach is very important. Getting to know each other's numbers, any type of social media they could leave past. Since the 50th anniversary, I started learning more about who was in our corner and how in depth BSU was. It was hard to find different archives that were events, and it was more in depth than what we had events in the past. I'll be honest, like it was homecoming events. It was different things that they were planning for. It was well thought out, and it gave me hope. So I guess the part is that both students and alumni can have some common ground that we are North Parkers at the end of the day. We come from a background where it is put together, it is where we stand for, and that's how we grew. And yeah, just well connections, stay connected with each other, emails, phone numbers. When I pass my phone number down to my next president, and if they need to have a conversation, they do the same, and then we could have an event just like this where I could come talk to the students from the past and leading to the future, and the same way going back forth, so we could keep this tradition because it's bigger than me. And as we see that, it's great that from someone that is still here, able to give me advice and show my next people that I want to bring up from to get that same opportunity. And that's huge. That is like, I appreciate you for being here, Dr. DuBose. And it's just an honor to get to meet someone that is, not from the same cut of cloth, but that understands what it meant to struggle between leadership, being a student, and being a young man, and trying to go up from that, because it takes time ultimately.
Yep.
So I think we have to bridge the gap between the old and the young, basically.
Yeah. I will say this about North Park and the world after North Park. Depending on what you do for a living, and depending on where you do it, you will find yourself in environments that you are the only Black person, one of 3, one of 10, whatever, depending on what that organization is. So in a lot of ways, North Park prepares you for life, or prepares you for a life that's different than the life I had on the South Side, because that was going to be a whole different life. And so, there will be, in my opinion, throughout your career, throughout your life, times when you will find yourself the only Black person in the room. And at least North Park does prepare you for that. It does prepare you to, I know how to exist in this in this organization, in this environment. I know how to be comfortable in it. I know how to achieve in it. And not everybody's going to like you. It's not everybody is. Some people are going to hate you because you're Black. Some people are going to hate you for other reasons, but that's just a fact. That's just life. So.
Well, thank you, Mr. DuBose.
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
work, for being a trailblazer, for myself, for Ericka, for Reg, who was on this call beforehand, and also for Jordan, for everyone else who came before. Before we close out, I want to kind of run down a few announcements about some things we have going on this weekend and in the future. Tomorrow we have the Alumni Diversity Tailgate, and so please come through. It'll be from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. Alumni can register on the homecoming website, and the grand prize will be an NPU diploma frame. And students and employees can then register on My NPU Engage. As Andy mentioned in his presentation, the exhibit will be coming back in February, so please be on the lookout for this exhibit honoring the wonderful trailblazing work Mr. DuBose did for our institution and for Black students alike. And so again, thank you for that. And also the last one I want to plug is for MLK Day. Please be on the lookout for information regarding that. We have Mickey Kendall, who is a Chicago native. She wrote a book on Black feminism. She'll be coming to our campus to speak on intersecting the reality of Dr. King and what we have going on in our world today. And finally, as you know, if you haven't been living under a rock, we live in the age where police brutality has been, unfortunately, is easy to see. In Mr. DuBose's time, there weren't no video cameras, there was no Instagram Live, there was no Facebook Live, but the same things were happening to Black and brown people during that time. And so next week, in 2 weeks, October 14th, there will be a conversation surrounding George Floyd, and we will be having an interview with panelists as well as a family member of George Floyd, and students who were in Minnesota during the protests and during the time where the police state came through and there were tanks. So please register for that event. You can check out the NPU Engage and look under the diversity office for those events, as well as check our social media to see those events. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming through today. Most importantly, I would like to thank Mr. DuBose. Mr. DuBose, I definitely will be emailing you separately and privately because I would want to hear more from you and just talk to you more, just to glean more wisdom. And so I thank you again. This is it. And so thank you everybody for attending this event. We appreciate it all. God bless and be safe this weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will be ending our event. We're going to ask everyone but the panelists to exit at this time. Thank you.